So all of what Joel said is the premise of my entire presentation. It really is. So I'm getting calls. I'm a floodplain manager, so I'm coming from a completely different end of the spectrum. I'm not an attorney. I get phone calls, though. Okay, I have to hit that, I guess, to do this. So I get phone calls from residents saying, you know, I bought this house, and now it's flooded, and we moved out, and we fixed it, and we got our insurance, and then we moved back in, and the next day another tropical storm hit and we flooded again. So back to my mother-in-law's house, her one-bedroom apartment with her dog is myself, my husband, our 2 large dogs, and our 2 babies for another 2 months while we fix our house again. So repetitive flooding is a common scenario throughout the United States. In Florida particularly, just in case. I introduced myself to somebody earlier. I said, hi, I'm Lisa, I'm from Pinellas. Pinellas County. Where's that? So I figured I would throw this in here. That was yesterday. So see that little peninsula down there? That's Florida. So this is the middle of that little peninsula. You see that other little peninsula on the left there? Okay, so that's Pinellas County, and then you can see that whole string of barrier islands down the side. There's about 13 communities on those barrier islands, 10 of which are 100% on the barrier island, so 100% special flood hazard area, evac A, coastal high hazard, et cetera, et cetera. We have 24 municipalities in Pinellas County. It's about 280 square miles, and we are the most densely populated county in Florida. We have almost 1 million people there now, and we are growing rapidly. That's a lot of people on a peninsula, if you think about an evacuation. This is our storm surge. So we have 2 little islands. If a Cat 5 came through, we'd have 2 little islands. The barrier islands would be long gone. We'd have 2 brand new islands. And then if you go into an area that is outside the storm surge, you can see we've got floodplain everywhere. We have lakes and rivers and creeks throughout the entire county. We have one called Cross Bayou that cuts across the entire county. You can see it right in the middle here. So if storm surge came, it's tidally influenced from 2 sides. We obviously have a lot of flooding around that area. So outreach is of the utmost importance. And I'm getting phone calls from buyers, and I can't tell them if the house is flooded. I have the data. I get it from FEMA. I have all the policy data. I have all the claims data. But if somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm looking at this house, can you tell me if it's flooded? No, I'm sorry, I can't. That's data that's protected by the Privacy Act of 1970. You will need to ask the seller to find out from me or from FEMA if that property has flooded before. Therein lies the problem that Joel was talking about. So, Pinellas County decided we've been a little bit reactive with all of this floodplain management stuff. Let's take a look at what we're doing. We've got a lot of flooding going on. Public Works is going crazy cleaning ditches, and we're having residents complain, and we have all this stuff going on. Emergency management is going nuts with their plans, trying to get everybody, to listen to what they're saying. So let's take a look at the outreach we have. Let's take a look at the programs we have in place. Let's get rid of some of this overlap. So this was back in 2013. And we took a look at what the county was doing, and they were doing all this really awesome stuff. And then we said, but if we kind of organized it and pulled some documentation together, you could probably do really well in the CRS program. They're already sitting at a 7, but there was a new manual coming out. And we said, why don't we see what we can do to improve your score, or at least make sure we maintain that 7 for you. And let's make a PPI. Let's pull together a program for public information so we can really streamline the messages going out and see who else we can hit. And Cece worked her magic with all her people that she knows through FFMA. She's the executive director of FFMA. So she contacted everybody to get everybody at the same table so we could look at what are our messages, what projects do we have going on, what services can we offer to our residents, or just to improve the floodplain generally speaking, and what other initiatives can we come up with. So Cece called all the people, and we got this little table full of people. So this was our original program for public information committee. But 2 of the gentlemen sitting at that table are from the Pinellas Realtor organization. And we just sat around the table and we were talking. And we said, so what do we need to do? And Joe and Tom from Pinellas Realtor Org said, our realtors just really don't understand this stuff. They really need to learn about this. And I'm sitting there saying, well, if they don't understand, how the heck do the buyers understand? So, and of course, people, their perception, right, is, well, if I call an insurance agent, they're going to try to sell me insurance. So do they really want to listen to an insurance agent about flood risk? Or do they trust a realtor more? So we said, okay, let's start working with these realtors. What do we need to do? So we came up with this real estate disclosure program. And I do want to mention here that we had more people involved in the PPI. This was our very, very first meeting when we made the cover of the document, and we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We went back and forth with ISO on this stuff to make sure that we were meeting all their expectations and that we were doing things efficiently and effectively. And then we pulled the municipalities in for their feedback too. So this was a year-long process to pull all of this together. But we looked at it and we said, these realtors, they want to do the right thing, and they're the boots on the ground. They really are. I'm one floodplain manager, and they are hundreds of realtors in the county working in all 24 of those municipalities as well as unincorporated. So let's teach them. How can we educate them about risk? How can we educate them about insurance requirements? Let them pass that information on. They're the boots on the ground. And guess what? We're going to get some CRS points. We're doing what's right for the community. The cherry on top is we get some CRS credit for it. So the first step in this was to develop a map service, and I'm going to pause here. We do have an awesome map service center that's online, but a community does not need to have one of these because there are some tools out there that are already done that are fabulous. NOAA has a coastal mapper tool that can be used for this. The FEMA Map Service Center can show you all the floodplains that they've got mapped. So just those tools alone, anybody in the country can do a program like this without building their own map service center. We built our own. We have a different tab for every single risk. We've got storm surge, evacuation zones, FEMA's floodplains. We do watershed management plans, which are more detailed flood studies, and we regulate our own watershed floodplains as well as FEMA's. So we have additional floodplains out there as well. So step one was to build this map service center. Step two was to make a brochure. And Cece can pass some brochures out here. I gave her a stack of those. So this brochure has a little fillable section on the back. It's got a slew of information for the buyer. And then on the back, they can put down the address, and then they can use that map service to figure out what that flood risk is. And we really we brought it down. So we said, you're in a high risk, a low risk, or a moderate risk. So if there's any blue on the property, we tell them just check that top box. That's going to tell you your property is in a special flood hazard area. Flood insurance is going to be required with a mortgage, federally backed mortgage, but we all know most mortgage companies are going to require it regardless of what kind of loan it is. And then the second box, if they're outside of the blue, is one of those, it's low or moderate risk. It could still flood. We recommend you get insurance, but it's probably not going to be required. But at least they know what their level of risk is. Then the next section is about that COBRA zone. We have a handful of properties that are in the COBRA, which means if they were built after that COBRA zone from FWS, and there was a presentation on this yesterday, if that COBRA zone got designated prior to a person building their house, they're not even eligible for an NFIP policy. So that's what that box is, and we have very few homes that box is ever going to be checked on, but we do have a handful, so it's on there. And then the next two are, is this property susceptible to storm surge? And that's any kind of storm surge, Cat 1 through 5. Is storm surge going to touch this property? And this is all property-based, it's not building-based. So you'll notice it says, on that first one, on the back it says, any structure or building in the blue part is going to be required to have the insurance, not anywhere on the property. I'm not having real estate professionals make flood zone determinations by any stretch of the imagination here. We're giving them the tools and the information they need. Some of them do it and some of them don't. We're never going to have 100% participation unless there's a regulatory or a policy change. So the next one is, what evacuation zone are you in? So this is a lot of information in a little tiny box. And this little screenshot that I have here, we've been working on our map service, and you can now plug in an address, click on the parcel, it'll pop up a pop-up box, you click on it, and the brochure will download filled out for you. So we've made it super easy for the real estate professionals to use. So the next part is to teach them how to use all this stuff, teach them about flood risk. So I pulled together a 2-hour training. Ooh, that was not enough. Let me tell you, they were like, what? Huh? What? Too much information. They were kind of freaking out, and at the end when they did the evaluation, they said, we need more. We want more, we want more, we want more. So the next one we did was all day. We did a morning session and an afternoon session, and I'll go through a few of the slides that we do there. So this is a typical training. Cece took a picture from the back of the room for me. And then here's some handouts. The brochure, obviously, they get. One of the comments on one of the evaluations from one of the trainings, we've done a lot of these now, was we don't know what the lingo is. What is FEMA? What is FIRM? What is, BFE? What is all this stuff you mumbo jumbo? So we gave them a cheat sheet. So it's just common acronyms with a little description, like COBRA. What's a COBRA? So that's on there. And then the last piece of this is obviously the participation. So we have a whole bunch of real estate professionals. They do the training. They love the tools. They want more, they want more, they want more, and they participate in this. They're out there showing a house. They're printing these. So just from talking to them after the fact, they're like, well, we fill them out, we make a bunch of copies, and we leave them at the open house. So they have the open house, and these forms are there for people to pick up. Other ones that are showing houses, so they have the buyer as their client. They'll take them to show them houses, and they'll send them a copy of it if they're looking at a house. And that just makes the buyer be informed to make informed decisions. So this is the outline of the morning class that we do. Like I said, we broke it into 2 sessions. So the morning class kind of talks about what the county does, kind of what CRS is, what maps are available. We have different risks on different maps, different tab for each risk. And then we talk about the brochure a little bit, and then some flood insurance basics. We just kind of tap the egg on the basics, just real general information. And then we go on to the afternoon session, and we really kind of dig into it. We actually do it practical. We talk about property protection measures, elevating equipment. We talk about flood vents and how in the 90s we didn't have a rule that said you had to have flood vents, but now we do, and there's no grandfathering of flood vents, so you're going to get rated on that bottom floor, for example. Just little tidbits of information for them. And then we do the hands-on practical, and CC always brings prizes, which wakes them up. So if they get the answer right, and whoever raises their hand first, I usually have an intern there with me, and he has to say which one raised their hand first. So CC says, and then if they're right, they get the card, and if they're not, everybody's like, "Aw." So, but it just kind of wakes them up at the end, So these are just a few slides from the presentation that I do for the training for them. And I kind of break it out as, you're always evaluating your risk. You're always looking at things. What are you going to do? Are you going to cross the road here, or are you going to cross the road there? And, you're always kind of looking at your risk. Are you going to buy those chips or those chips? Do you want an extra 30 minutes on the treadmill or not? So we talk about risk, and then I pull this up, and I say, so here's a house. What do you think the risk is here? And everybody says, oh, that's high risk. And then I say, so here's a picture of the house. This is from Realtor.com. And that's where the house was. This is after Michael. This is 6 blocks to the west? Same area, Mexico Beach. Cute little bungalow. And there it was. So you would expect high risk on both of those, right? You just expect that. So here's the FEMA map. So that second house is there. The first house is down in the blue area, high risk, but that second house is in a low risk. It's in an unshaded X zone on the FEMA map. So then we talk about probability versus category of a storm. So the probability of that happening was way less than 1% annual chance. So we kind of have a conversation about probability. This was an EVAC A. This was in a storm surge area. But what were the chances of a Cat 4 or 5 hitting that spot, that particular spot? Way less than 1%. And then we talk about, this was Florence, so this is North Carolina. How far is this from the coast? So would you be looking at this as a high risk? Because we have a lot of areas in Pinellas County that are not anywhere near, and I showed you that little screenshot of all the blue that was way outside that storm surge area, right? Up on top of those little high spots, we have tons of floodplain. So it might not be rushing water that's going to take the house away, but it's still water that's going to rise and flood and cause a lot of damage. This was Harvey, and I asked them, what do you think this little thing down in the bottom left is? Poop plant. And then we showed them this, and then I mentioned, so when you see the kids out there with their boogie boards in the flood water, that's what they're in. and maybe they shouldn't be, so it's just kind of a little teaching moment. And then we can kind of roll into the insurance. And we talk about how many people did not have flood insurance. That's a lot of people. 80% didn't have flood insurance. And half of those people were in a low or moderate risk flood zone. But look at Michael. That was low risk. Did they buy that $480 preferred risk policy? Who knows? So then I break into the actual presentation. So why are you here? You're here to learn. And then we talk about why they're there and how it's going to reduce their risk of being sued over saying something or not saying something, actually, about the flood risk. Now, if a seller knows the house is flooded, they've lived there, the couple that I was telling you about earlier, they flooded during Tropical Storm Colin and then again during Hermine, separated by only a couple of months. They know their house flooded. It had flooded once before they bought their house. Did that person tell them? I'm guessing not. She didn't seem to be aware of any previous flooding. So that becomes a civil suit, right? She can go back and sue the person she bought it from for not disclosing that, because if you know the place flooded, you do have to disclose it. But if you don't know, and a lot of people just sign it's an investment property, I don't know anything about this property. You're in Florida, so there's a lot of investment properties. So they just sign off, I don't know, so free and clear. It's a tricky one, but we don't have the rule that says you have to disclose flood zone, insurance requirement, evacuations. We don't have the rules. We only have if you knew about it, you have to disclose it. That's all we have. So this is all voluntary, and you saw how full that room was. So this empowers them, it gives them information, it gives them an edge over the other real estate professionals that aren't in the training, that aren't participating in this. And this was a comment on one of my evaluation forms, and I was like, are you kidding me? And so then I go on my little rant, I get on my soapbox, and I'm like, I am one floodplain manager in a county of almost 1 million people with almost 15 million, actually it's more than that now, it's like over 15 million tourists a year. That's a lot of people in Pinellas County, which is a peninsula on a peninsula with 13 communities on barrier islands in a subtropical climate that is subject to sea level rise. So, I knew what I was getting into. I just look at this for a minute with them and I say, so you guys are the boots on the ground. If you were the realtors, I'd be telling you this. You are the boots on the ground. I can't do it. You have to do this for me. And then I just remind them of all the things they are. Because these are the buyer's best friend. They are looking out for the buyer. They are trying to figure out what their budget is, what they can afford, what they can't afford. And they want to protect their buyer. They want to do what's right. They want to do a good job. So they need to just be empowered, really. So I spend a good 5 minutes kind of pumping their egos, to be honest with you, because they really are a critical piece of floodplain management. Any way you look at it, they are boots on the ground. The insurance agents are too, and a lot of the insurance agents need training so that they understand flood insurance better. And then we have our lenders, same thing. And then we have our title companies, our surveyors. We have so many industries that touch floodplain management. We need to get them tied in so that they can the buyers can make informed decisions. So, just a recap, this is the training program. We get a lot of people, a lot of participation. It is 100% voluntary. We could not have done this without Pinellas Realtor Organization's support and input. The brochures were vetted through. We drafted it. It went to the gentlemen that were on our PPI committee. They tweaked it. We tweaked it. We sent it to ISO. They tweaked it. Round and round it went, and then it went to Pinellas Realtor Organization's attorneys. They gave it the check mark. It's okay to use. It's great. And we have been working so closely with the Pinellas Realtor Organization. It's been an amazing relationship, and we wouldn't be where we are with a completely voluntary program. Things do need to change as far as policy goes, I think, and I also really, I know it's protected by the Privacy Act, but I think it's unfair that a buyer cannot get that information about the flood claims. Keep in mind, those flood claims are incomplete data set. We have private policies. We don't have any of that data. So when I plot out all those flood losses to try to figure out some hot spots of flooding, it's an incomplete picture. So I gave you copies of stuff, and we're going to hold the questions till the end.